So, a couple days ago, the 2026 COBBLE season has basically come to an end with a pretty emotional victory of Wout van Aert at Paris-Roubaix. Now, I normally don't do a tier list for the COBBLE season, but I felt like doing it today. But importantly, I do my ratings based on the expectation that I had personally, so it's quite subjective. And of course, after you've watched this video, I want your take in the comment section below, so keep rating along with me. I think I want to start by talking about Soudal Quickstep, a team that's undergone a pretty massive change in the last transfer season, the departure of Remco Evenepoel. They decided to move their focus back to the COBBLE season as well, next to sprinting with Merlier, so they signed the likes of Dylan van Baarle and Jasper Stuyven. Now, of course, it was never realistic for those two riders to beat Mathieu van der Poel, Tadej Pogacar in RVV or Paris-Roubaix, but it was about respectability. Now, of course, to get the bad news out of the way, Merlier got injured and he was basically out for the first half of the season, and Manier, he basically planted his front wheel into every COBBLE, had a mechanical every race. But despite all that, Jasper Stuyven very much delivered with a 7th place at Milano-San Remo, a 6th place at the Tour of Flanders, a 3rd place on a monument, Paris-Roubaix. That's a podium position, that's awesome. So, big race Jasper, he delivered. When it comes to our tier list, I decided to put Soudal Quickstep in B, but I was struggling a lot between A and B, so it could have gone either way. Our next team is Ineos Grenadiers, and I gotta confess, it was also quite difficult to rate them because they won a race with Filippo Ganna at Dwars door Vlaanderen, but outside of that, while I did see Samuel Watson and Ben Turner a couple of times, especially that Turner crash, I didn't feel like they were prominent in the other COBBLE races, especially if we compare it to Jasper Stuyven. That said, a B rating is still what I give the Ineos Grenadiers for this COBBLE season. Our next team, Jayco Alula, definitely performed worse, but maybe it's understandable because Michael Matthews broke both his wrists on training before MSR. And while I do remember a top 10 position for Vendrame at MSR, outside of that race, I didn't feel like I saw Jayco much outside of breakaways. Actually, I shouldn't forget Gent-Wevelgem, where I think Bob Donaldson got a top 10 as well. Either way, it's a D-tier performance for Jayco Alula, in my opinion. Okay, time for Bahrain Victorious, a team that actually won a race, but it's a really small race, GP Denain. Basically, AliExpress Paris-Roubaix. But I do think the race highlights an improvement by Alex Segaert, who always struggled with positioning, but managed to finish top 20 at both RVV and Roubaix this year. And I'm pretty sure Mohoric managed to top 10 the Tour of Flanders. I reckon it's C tier for Bahrain Victorious. They were simply not that relevant in the biggest races. Now, I think Education EasyPost is not that difficult to rate because they were not overly relevant across the COBBLE season, despite 3 top 10s by Luc Lamperti quite impressively at Omloop Kuurne and the Tour of Bruges. That said, I don't remember anything else, so D tier for Education EasyPost. Now, I am quite hyped to talk about the Unibet Road Rockets because they've had a pretty fantastic COBBLE season. While I was quite bullish on Matthias Kopecky and Lukas Kubic, it came from Dylan Groenewegen, the old veteran with 3 victories. Bredene Coxeire, Jean-Pierre Montserrat and Ronde van Brugge. That's way too Flemish. Getting their first World Tour win and about 800 UCI points, so a fantastic catch. I'm really doubting between A tier and S tier, but I think I'll go A tier because I'm feeling a bit conservative today. I just want S tier to have that wow feeling, you know? If I think about UNOX's COBBLE season, I think it's one level below Soudal Quickstep because they were present in the smaller classics. For example, Abrahamsen with a top 10 in Gent-Wevelgem and a top 5 in A3, and a pretty fantastic podium by Warenskjold at Dwars door Vlaanderen. But I don't really remember them in the actual monuments, the biggest races, so that's a struggle for me. C tier for UNOX Mobility is what I'd say. Especially in contrast with Tudor Pro Cycling, a pro team that was quite visible in monuments and in the smaller classics. Getting a fantastic result at Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne with 2 of their riders, Trentin and Mozzato, on the podium. And Matteo Trentin as a whole was a cornerstone in this classic seasan with a top 10 at Milano-San Remo, A3 and also Gent-Wevelgem to then crash out sadly in RVV. For me, a B tier for Tudor Pro Cycling. Shout out to Trentin, I love that guy. So I was about to start talking about Groupama-FDJ and then I wondered, do I count Strade Bianche within my COBBLE season assessment? I think I will. Cause well, Romain Grégoire had a fantastic result there, 4th place and was pretty strong within that race, but then in the actual COBBLE races, while being in the attack if I recall at Dwars door Vlaanderen, not exactly getting any results. Also, next to Grégoire, I don't remember anything about this team. C tier is my rating for Groupama-FDJ. If we talk about Pinarello Q36.5, most of the conversations are rightfully about Tom Pidcock, who didn't exactly start the season well with Omloop at Nieuwsblad, but after that got a top 10 at Strade but looked good. then got second at MSR. And of course, Pidcock skipped the other COBBLE races, so I have to look at ME de Gent, who actually had a pretty good COBBLE season with, I think, 2 top 10s at both Omloop and Gent-Wevelgem and a nice 12th place at RVV. Honestly, I find this one really difficult because Pidcock was actually in the running to potentially win Milano-Sanremo, but then outside of that, the team was really not competitive nor very visible in the other races. My heart says B, my head says C. I reckon I'll go with B because of Pidcock at Sanremo. Always follow your heart, kids. Now, before we get to the rest of the teams, I want to give you a short update on our Fantasy Cycling League that we started back in January. Basically a tournament where you and I can build a fantasy team for every single World Tour race, score points, and compete against each other. Over 1,000 of you signed up for this, and I've had a lot of fun making my teams, but my results have been a bit of a roller coaster. Literally in the first race of my season, the Santos Tour and Under, 3 of my riders abandoned from the get-go. And the result is, well, a mid-table 381st place. I was able to pick up the pace at the UAE Tour, where Tiberi, Del Toro, and Milan scored quite a few points for me, resulting in a top 30 in that race. But when Omloop Nieuwsblad came around, I started overthinking the point system, literally skipping Mathieu van der Poel because he was too expensive, and tried to stack the top 10 with other outsiders. Guess what happened? Mathieu van der Poel won, and I scored barely any points. That said, in most of my races, I've been able to place myself in the top 25% of our league, but I've actually been on fire in the last couple of weeks, especially in Roubaix. With Wout van Aert, Pogacar, Stuyven and Van der Poel, I had the entire top 4 in my fantasy cycling team, finishing 7th, my first top 10 of the season. Anyway, going into the Ardennes, I'm just outside of the top 100 in our standings right now, and my goal in the coming races is breaking into that top 100. But I would love to hear from you. How is your fantasy cycling team doing? Drop it in the comment section below. And by the way, if you're not competing in our fantasy cycling league yet, you can still join. Like, sure, you probably won't win overall, but you can still win individual races like the upcoming Giro d'Italia. And doing so is easy and free. Just download the fantasy cycling app, use this code to join our private league, and make your team before every single World Tour race. Anyway, back to the video. Oh, I'm gonna struggle with this next team, I think. Lidl-Trek, with 3 riders that I want to talk about, starting off with Matthias Vacek, who kind of disappointed in this classic season. He was super strong last year at Omloop, and I never really saw that level this year throughout the entire classic season. And while I do believe that Jonathan Milan could potentially win Gent-Wevelgem in the future, I feel like they're forcing it in races that don't fit him. But of course, if we talk about Trek, we have to talk about Mes Pedersen, who injured himself going into the season, therefore starting late. But if we look at his results, I don't think they're that disappointing. A top 5 at both MSR and RVV, 7th at Roubaix, 9th at E3, and 10th at Dwars door Vlaanderen. Considering the injury and the sickness, I think that's a really good run. And outside of Dwars door Vlaanderen, I feel like Mes Pedersen for once rode with his brain turned on. I feel like I've thrown a lot of teams in this tier, but I'll go with B for Lidl-Trek. They were present and visible, but not competitive. I think it's time to talk about one of the big teams again, Alpecin-Premier Tech. Starting with Jasper Philipsen, I wasn't too bearish at the start of the COBBLE season, but then he started winning Nokere Koersen and Gent-Wevelgem, a prominent race. But of course, Mathieu van der Poel is the big story here, starting off dominantly at Omloop Nieuwsblad and then winning E3 after a 90-minute solo. But this year, not a single monument victory for Mathieu van der Poel and Alpecin-Premier Tech, and that's a bit of a problem. I can definitely understand losing Milano-Sanremo after crashing before the Cipressa. I know that Pogacar also crashed, but one crash does not equal another crash. And I know that Tadej Pogacar is for sure the favorite going into the Tour of Flanders, but Mathieu van der Poel did not exactly ride the smartest final ever. But it is Paris-Roubaix that I have to crucify Alpecin-Premier Tech as a team on, because how is it possible that Mathieu van der Poel and Jasper Philipsen, your co-leaders for this race, have different pedal setups? That is insane. That's perhaps fine in a race like Milano-Sanremo, but in Paris-Roubaix, the odds of a bike change are gigantic. Like, I don't think it's a hot take that if Mathieu van der Poel does not lose 2 minutes 15 in Truide-Arenberg, that he probably returns to the front of the race and competes for the win. I'm gonna give Alpecin-Premier Tech an A tier, but I gotta say, I was really close to putting them in B. Now, I do feel like putting one women's team in this video. I don't have the time to do them all, but FDJ-Suez deserves it. After a badly timed mechanical in Strade Bianche for Demi Vollering, her teammates step up. Koch and Shabby ends up winning the race. And I think it's fair to say that when Demi Vollering did not have a mechanical, she was pretty fantastic, winning Omloop Nieuwsblad and dominating the Tour of Flanders. And even at the Tour of Flanders, I gotta give massive credit to the team, because a rider like Celia Géry, 20-year-old, was fantastic in that race. And like I said with Strade Bianche, in the races where Demi Vollering is not present, the teammates step up. Paris-Roubaix femme, Franziska Koch, she was super strong. I kind of was expecting her to be that strong, but don't want to pat myself on the shoulders too much. She won the race against two Visma riders in the final. Fantastic outcome. I don't think this will come as a shock, but FDJ-Suez is undoubtedly S tier, the best team in women's cycling. I feel like Red Bull-Bora-Hansgrohe had a pretty interesting development because last year at the COBBLE season, there was no hierarchy, everybody was kind of riding for themselves and it was chaos within the team. This year, from the opening weekend, it was already clear that that had changed because there was teamwork involved and Tim van Dijken podiumed at Omloop. And I think they got a top 10 in nearly every COBBLE Classic except Gent-Wevelgem maybe, with the likes of Piffy, Gianni Vermeers, Mick van Dijken, Tim van Dijken. Especially Mick van Dijken getting 6th at Paris-Roubaix, I did not expect. That was great. But undoubtedly the most impressive Red Bull result of this COBBLE season is Remco Evenepoel at the Tour of Flanders. Talk about not giving up when you get dropped. That was pretty great. But I think I'm leaning to B tier for Red Bull-Bora-Hansgrohe because I'm missing a victory. By the way, there's a bunch of teams on my list like Cofidis that I simply don't remember a single thing of, so I think I'll just skip them. Like, the only thing I remember from this COBBLE season from Burgos Pellet, the Spanish pro team, is that they ride in a Sirocco kit, so shout out to Sirocco, by the way, 10% off to the link below. Now, I am looking forward to talking about Decathlon CMA CGM, so let's begin. I want to start off by saying that it's really impressive that every single transfer they did paid off, except the ones that are injured like Koyan Benoot. Like Tobias Lund Andresen, he performed really well. 6th place in Omloop, 7th at Kuurne, 6th at E3, and I think 2nd at Gent-Wevelgem? And it's not just Tobias, it's also the team around him that was better, the likes of Kees Bol and Dan Hole. Add to that Stefan Bissiger crawling out of the woodworks to get a top 10 in Paris-Roubaix 2 years in a row. That was funny. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh here, but I think I'll go with B tier because I want a victory to put them in A tier. And I'm sorry, but I'm not counting the Cat 11's Great Ocean Road Race for this video. Anyway, this is what our tier list looks like with two more teams I do want to talk about. UAE Team Emirates and Visma-Lease bike. I know when I say UAE Team Emirates, you say Tadej Pogacar, but we'll start with Florian Vermeers. I think it's fair to say Vermeers had a really good COBBLE season, starting off at Omloop, where he finished on the podium. I also just remembered how the E3 Saxo Classic ended with Mathieu van der Poel just not getting caught out of decision by the second group. I probably should have scrutinized Abrahamsen in the UNOX tier list a bit more, but talking about Vermeers getting 3rd place at E3 is a good result. Now, of course, in the bigger races like RVV and Paris-Roubaix, he's supposed to work for Tadej Pogacar, and he did that at RVV, getting 7th still, but at Paris-Roubaix, he kinda just crashed out at Truide-Arenberg. Now, Tadej Pogacar rode 4 races this season, and he lost one, so is he washed? Jokes aside, Strade Bianche, wonderful victory. Tour of Flanders, wonderful victory. It's Milano-San Remo though, that is carved in my head. The way he won that, crashing before the Cipressa, still deciding to launch on the Cipressa after coming back to the peloton. In doing so, breaking the record on the Cipressa. Then on the Poggio, dropping Mathieu van der Poel, staying with Pidcock, and actually winning the sprint against Pidcock at the finish line. That is a wonderful victory. I'm sorry, but wonderful is too weak of a word. That is a legendary victory. And yes, Tadej Pogacar did lose Paris-Roubaix, and that's gonna be the last monument for him to complete to get the 5 monuments across his career, but I think with a couple of years to go, he's probably gonna achieve that at some point. S tier for UAE Team Emirates, I'm sorry, but it's 2 monument victories. Okay, our last team is Visma-Lease bike, and I want to start talking about Matthew Brennan first. I was pretty bullish on Brennan going into the COBBLE season, and he did deliver with a victory in Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne, but afterwards, I think he got sick in the week of Milano-San Remo and was kind of invisible from that point onwards. Then again, I have to give him massive credit for the lead-out he did for Wout van Aert before Truide-Arenberg at Paris-Roubaix. Now, before we do get to Wout van Aert, I want to talk about Christophe Laporte, who was injured for most of last year with, I think, a virus, but this year, he was a beacon of consistency. I'm just gonna read his results off PCS now. 4th at Omloop, 16th at MSR, 7th at E3, 3rd at Gent-Wevelgem, 7th at Dwars door Vlaanderen, 9th at RVV, and 5th at Paris-Roubaix. If anything, it's a wonder that he finished Paris-Roubaix, because the last couple of years, he was skateboarding on his back wheel before they got to the first COBBLE sector. But lastly, I have to talk about him, Wout van Aert, who started off the COBBLE season with a pretty good level already at Strade Bianche, but while I was a bit worried about his tactics and his positioning, he kept getting results, getting third place at Milano-Sanremo with a late attack from the second group, then getting into the attack with Mathieu van der Poel in Gent-Wevelgem, doing that himself solo in Dwars door Vlaanderen, just getting caught on the line by Filippo Ganna. Now, I've said my opinion on Wout van Aert for RVV and Roubaix a couple of years now, which is that in RVV, he is simply inherently not as fitting to the parkour than Mathieu van der Poel and Pogacar. And this year he finished 4th in the race, which showed that he had the level for Paris-Roubaix, and Roubaix is the one monument that I truly believed he could still win. But I think it's important to highlight that throughout the career of Wout van Aert, the question of is he going to win the Tour of Flanders or Paris-Roubaix has been haunting him every day of the week. To then see Wout van Aert enter the velodrome with Tadej Pogacar last Sunday, out-sprinting him, winning the race 8 years after Michael Collaerts, his previous teammate, passed away due to a heart attack during Paris-Roubaix 2018. That was an incredible victory by Wout van Aert, and it's the fact that he dedicated that victory immediately. His first words in the interview that made me cry instantly. Stuff like that shows that Wout van Aert is not just a class rider, but also a class person next to the bike. Honestly, in terms of being a fan, I'm kind of indifferent about any of the current riders, but when I woke up this Monday, I had this smile on my face that I was happy that I lived in a world where Wout van Aert won Paris-Roubaix. But if I turn on my brain again and start thinking about the way I need to rate Visma-Lease bike, then I think about how I rated Alpecin-Premier Tech, where I gave them a A tier, almost a B tier. When it comes to Visma, I feel like I want to give them an A+. So yeah, A tier for Visma-Lease bike, and this is what my final tier list looks like. But like I said at the start, now it's your turn. I want to hear your opinion on this tier list. Where do you think these teams fit? Anyway, I probably won't do this for the Hill Classics, but I definitely will be back with a tier list after the Giro, so stay tuned for that. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.